you realize unforgiveness is wicked? Whoa. The last person you didn't forgive, you were wicked. That repositions it, doesn't it? I forgave you all that debt because you begged me. Should you, now look at this, should you not also have had compassion on your fellow servant, just as I had pity on you? Now here's the question. What's the king going to do now? And his master, the king, was angry and delivered him, now underline this, to the torturers. For how long? Until he should pay all that was due him. Now here's the zinger. Here's the point of the parable. This is the shocking part. Jesus now pulls back the veil between heaven and earth and lets all of us find out what the kingdom of heaven does to somebody on the kingdom of earth when they will not forgive. Yeah. And it's not good news. So, said Jesus, just like the king threw him to the torturers until he pay all that was due him, so my heavenly Father will do to you. What's that? Throw you to be tortured. If each of you, underline these next three words, from his heart does not forgive his brother, another human being, his trespasses, the things he did wrong against you. Do you realize what Jesus revealed? That as the king threw the man to the torturers, listen carefully, he didn't throw that man to prison. Yeah. He threw him to people that would torture him until the torture continues. Listen, the torture continues until that is paid off. Then Jesus gives the answer. Peter, you want to know why you should forgive 70 times 7? Because if you don't forgive, my Father will do that to you. He will deliver you to the torturers. For how long, Jesus? Until you forgive the person for every single thing he did that hurt you. You mean I get torture until I forgive? Yes, you do. And just imagine if you have 2 people that you don't forgive, and 3 people, and 4 people, and 10 people. And that's why life doesn't make sense. We don't understand the torture that comes from things emotionally, physically, financially, relationally, could be related all the way back because the Father said, nope, she won't forgive. Let's encourage her to forgive by sending her to be tortured all this time, and then she doesn't forgive another person. The torture increases. Then the person prays for that, asks people to fast for that, and it doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? Because we didn't connect it. That's still going on. And here's a person who couldn't believe in Jesus because they didn't forgive their mother. Just imagine what's happening in your life. So let's make some points about this as we get into this session. Number 1, God desires that everyone forgives everyone for everything. Number 2, God describes people who don't forgive as wicked. As wicked. Therefore, if I don't forgive you, I am wicked. Point number 3, God delivers everyone who chooses not to forgive to the torturers. I want you to understand something. God doesn't torture you. Look here. God doesn't torture you. God delivers you to the torturers. God doesn't do that. And I want to make a real point here. God doesn't want to deliver you to the torturers. It grieves him that you won't forgive. So there are 2 exceptions to this that I want you to understand. Exception number 1 is the window of grace. The window of grace. What is the window of grace? When a traumatic wound hits you that you can barely cope with, it's so painful and traumatic, God gives you a season of grace to cope with that and then forgive. He gives you some time. I don't know how long he gives us, but he does give us some time. I've had a couple times in my life where the wounds were so severe to me that I actually asked the Father, would you give me some time to cope? I will forgive. And had peace, and then forgave. There was no delivery to the torturers. Don't ask for 10 years. Number 2, exception 2, the season of childhood. You and I know about the traumas of childhood. All of us in this room have had various wounds from parents, from relatives when we were young, and we couldn't cope with the wounds that happened to us. What does God do? God postpones the torturers in a child's life because they are innocent until a period of time passes and they cross a barrier. We don't know when that barrier is. It's different for every child by their maturity, in which God then convicts them. Okay, I want you to forgive what he did to you. And you'll know it. You'll feel it. And you'll be convicted you should. And depending upon what you do there, changes the next period of your life, because he'll bring it about to you again. There is that series of innocence that he says, I won't judge you for this, but when you pass that innocent period where you can make up your own mind now, I'm going to invite you and tell you it's time to forgive this person. If you don't, that's when the torture begins. Make sense? Number 4, God is not abusive. That's my big fear of session 1, that you will misunderstand the heart of God. God does not want you to be delivered to the torturers. But he has little tolerance for the sin of unforgiveness. Little tolerance for it. We'll talk about later on today why God has little tolerance for this. Point number 5. You probably are wondering, what does it mean to be tortured? That comes from a Greek word. As you may know, the Old Testament in the Bible was originally written in Hebrew, and we translated into the language that we're from, like this is English. And the New Testament is written in mostly Greek. And therefore, when people like myself who've studied hard and learned some about Greek and some about Hebrew, I always want to know myself, what's the Greek word behind torture literally mean? I wanted to know, what does it mean? And the word is basanizo. B-A-S-A-N-I-Z-O. That's the Greek word, basanizo. I then took that Greek word and I looked all through the New Testament for every place basanizo was, and saw what was taking place so that I knew what could happen to me if I don't forgive. Because this is what will happen to me. I'll be thrown to those people who do this to me, who torture me. And I didn't include all of them on your notes, but I included many of them underneath this. Point 5, to torture means to cause another person distress and suffering. Torture is always suffering, but suffering takes different forms. So I've given you 4 verses that have basanizo in it. Matthew 8 says, when Jesus had entered Capernaum, a city, a centurion, a leader, came to him, pleading with him, saying, Lord, my servant is lying at home paralyzed, dreadfully tormented. Well, that's physical, isn't it? That's basanizo. So that can happen. Do you know how many people are physically ill? No. Because of unforgiveness. And when they forgive, they are healed. And when you, listen, when you have a physical illness directly related to a major sin of unforgiveness, no matter what you do, you will not be healed. Because the cause of that sickness is unforgiveness. That's why so many of you, so many Christians lose faith in God over this because they don't understand. They said, God can heal. I want to be healed. I have faith to be healed. And then they pray and they get their friends and God doesn't heal. Well, there may be a number of reasons why he doesn't. But after 40 years around the world, I'm utterly convinced the number one reason he doesn't is because it's a judgment of being tormented because the person will not forgive and they are acting as a wicked person. Does this make sense to you? Good. Second verse, 2 Peter chapter 2. And delivered righteous Lot, who was oppressed by the filthy conduct of the wicked, for that righteous man, dwelling among them, tormented his righteous soul from day to day by seeing and hearing their lawless deeds. What is that? That's emotional suffering. Emotional suffering. Then Revelation 12:2. Then being with child, she cried out in labor and in pain, that's basanidzo, to give birth. And probably the most serious one that I found was in Revelation 20 at the end of the age, when the devil who deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are, and they will be tormented day and night forever and ever. Look up here so you hear this sentence very clearly. Not all suffering, physical, mental, emotional, financial, relational, is from the sin of unforgiveness. But having talked to psychologists and psychiatrists and done a great deal of research, it appears a safe guess would be between 60 and 80% of all of that is related to unforgiveness. One of the classics ever written about this was by a secular man who did research and found out that 92% of everybody that are in a mental institution, 92%, would be released if they forgave other people. But they would not. Number 6, the torturers apply discipline. The torturers apply discipline until forgiveness is fully granted. What happens when you forgive? The contract is ended. The father says, that's enough. They finally did what was right. No more torture. Yeah. Number 7, circle this one, put it in red. Fear of the torturers is Christ's reason to forgive without limit. Christ, why do you want me to forgive? Because you don't want to be tortured, do you? Good. The basics of forgiveness is part number 2. And I want to quickly help you understand this. And I'm going to use a physical illustration and a heart illustration. Let's say that last week I fell down at the game park and I got a big cut in here. And we had a physician on the game park, and let's say he came and cleaned out the wound. And what would happen in about a week or two? It'd heal itself. The doctor doesn't heal anything. They can't heal it. They have no power to heal it. They just want to get it ready so the body can heal itself. That's because how God made the body. But what would happen if he missed a bunch of dirt way down deep inside of it? And he put stitches in it. What began to happen to that wound? It become infection. Then it become real sore. And let's say that I just saw this man here today and he didn't know I had an infected sore here, and he said to me, hey, how are you doing? What would I do? Watch this now. I would overreact. And he would wonder, what did he do wrong? This happens with unforgiveness all the time. Where you do something or say something to somebody and they overreact, and you said, where did that come from? Something going on inside that wasn't even related to you. If I do not take care of this, soon I'll have a line down here. And I'll get a little bit of a temperature. Then my head will begin to become a little cloudy. Then I'll start to get a big temperature. And I could eventually, if I left this alone, that infection could spread everywhere in me. But if I go back to the doctor and say, oh, there's something wrong in here, and he cleans it up and takes it out, what happens to the wound? It heals up. It may take a little longer this time. And in a month, when I see this man and he says to me, how's he doing? And he goes like this, guess what? I won't even feel it. Yeah. Wait, I won't even feel it. Wait, I won't even remember it. Yeah. Yeah. Now apply that to forgiveness, because forgiveness doesn't take place in your arm. Where does it take place in? Oh, right. And guess what? It's hidden. You can't see it. Yeah. And when somebody hurts me, whether they're intentional or unintentional, where is my wound? It's not in my head. It's not in my will. It's not in my big toe. Where is it? It's in my heart. And if I clean it out and make sure there's no unforgiveness in that wound, guess what happens to the wound? And it just grows and it heals. It heals by itself. And I don't have anything there except a scar that I don't even feel. And the next time I see you, I don't think about what you did because it's already healed. But if I have unforgiveness, that's the dirt. And as it becomes infected, then it starts affecting my emotions. And I start not trusting you anymore. And I start wondering, well, you acted like him. Maybe I shouldn't trust you anymore. And then I become afraid about what she may do to me. And I have new fears and anxious thoughts. And then at nighttime, I get a terrible nightmare about you. Wait, it gets much worse than that, doesn't it? And until you go back and realize I have wounds that are real, and they're still there. And until you clean out the dirt called unforgiveness, your heart will never heal. And if these wounds are long-standing like this lady, man, she was a hard woman. No man wanted her. She was hard. She was angry. She was filled with infection from her heart. I didn't know who the woman was when I met her. It wasn't until she forgave and her face changed and her heart opened, because she had walls so high nobody could get in. And she was afraid of everybody. And I'm hurting you so you can't hurt me. Yeah. And when she forgave for the first time, she found out who she was. And I liked her. But I didn't like, whoa. I had to love her, but I didn't like her. Okay. I liked her. Okay. It's different, isn't it? Yes. So could it be you've never found out how you really are? And all that torment. So let's see if we can't sketch that out. Is this helping and making sense this morning? So we left the blank there because I want you to draw this yourself. And here's the first thing that happens. It's a wound. It's a wound. Now that wound is something that may be intentional. Somebody wanted to hurt you. And that came. And it may be accidental. And that wound takes place where? In my heart. So put a heart right there. When that wound happens, the next thing that occurs is you have a choice. This is usually out of your control, isn't it? It's out of my control. But the choice is 100% in my control. It's what am I going to do with the wound? And I have two choices here, don't I? There's not three. We think there is, but there's only two. The first choice I have is I can obey. And I can forgive. Because Christ tells me to forgive. He commands me to. The other thing I can do is I can disobey. And I could choose not forgive. What happens when I forgive? Wonderful things happen. I heal. My heart heals. And then God blesses me. He always blesses a person who forgives. Always. If I don't forgive, I get torment. And instead of God blessing me, God judges me. That's how forgiveness works. It's pretty simple. Now, how do you know, because I've helped people many places, many groups of people, many individuals forgive. How do I know if a person needs to forgive? So let's say you and I sat down and we were talking and you were sharing some things. Do you know what I would say to you? If I thought it was from unforgiveness, I would say something like this. Would you say you experience torment from time to time? Why do I say that sentence? Because what does God, Jesus, say will happen to 100% of us if we don't forgive? We will experience what? Torment. Look up here for a minute. Follow through this carefully. Jesus says, if you don't, you will. Not, if you don't, some of us will. All of us. If each of you from his heart. So when I'm trying to help somebody, you don't know what the cause of something is. And if you don't know what the cause of it is, how can you really set them free? So what you must do is to figure out the cause. And this is a shortcut. So when I think into myself, all of this trauma in their marriage, where they're at the edge of getting divorced, is because of unforgiveness in both of their people's lives. And if I help them forgive, their marriage will come back together again. I will test this. Just like a doctor comes in and says, open your mouth. Let me look inside. Let me look in your ear. What's he doing? He's validating what he thinks you probably have. So how do I do this? I use what Jesus revealed, that you will be sent to the torturers and be tormented until you forgive. So because God wants everybody to forgive and wants the person that you're helping to get free of this, I give God his moment to confirm and verify that's the problem. And so I simply say to them, would you say you experience torment from time to time? It is shocking. God himself makes the person tell you the answer. They are unable to lie to you. The person will bow their head a little bit and say, you know, I never thought of it like that. Yeah, I do. I do experience torment. Even before you talk about unforgiveness. In my life to this moment, there's never ever been one exception to using that sentence. If the person says, no, I don't have any torment, I really don't. So you don't ever experience really bad anguish or anxiety or terrible thoughts? No, I really don't. It's not from unforgiveness. So at the bottom, in the conclusion, I have the forgiveness verifier. Would you say you have experienced torment? You don't have to teach this passage to them. Since Jesus reveals that unforgiveness always results in being delivered to the torturers, then asking the person if you experience torment, that's the result of torture, is the correct protocol or method to verify that the person indeed has unforgiveness in their life. God will make the person confirm or deny whether it's true. So let me ask you a question. Are you ready to open up a little bit? Really? Let's test you out. Open your mouth. Let me put the stick down. Let me look in your ear. How many of you need to forgive at least one person? Let me see your hands. At least one. How many don't have to forgive anyone of anything? Good for you. This course is for you. Wait till you get free of all of this. And wait till the Father in the kingdom of heaven says to the torturers, I cancel the contract, it's over, set them free. So, as we close this session, I have one question to you. What are you going to do when it's your moment to forgive? Will you run away? Don't ever run away again. Run to forgiveness. It's a great friend.